Hi everyone, I'm Marissa Evangelista. I'm a gallery assistant with the Maryland Federation of Art, and I'm here to introduce our guest, Jennifer Hudson. She began her career as a painter with emphasis on realistic nature scenes and fantasy-based illustrations. She is now recognized as an award-winning cut paper artist and painter. She uses scalpel knives to create delicate lace-like works, which are all cut by hand for her cut paper art, which showcases her love of illustrative nature scenes. And MFA has the honor of showcasing Jen's work for a second time now in our spring member show, which will be up in Circle Gallery through May 24th. I'd also like to briefly introduce our host, Will Scott. Will is an art historian who bridges the gap between artists and the public.
Well, thank you, Marissa, for the introductions and also for your longstanding support in doing the Will Talks. And as always, I encourage you, if you have some questions, you often do have thoughtful questions, just chime right in. So, Jennifer, you and I did meet at a reception when you had the first piece accepted in one of the MFA shows, and I was fascinated with it at that time, and you explained it wonderfully. All right, this is this the one that was in that first show when we spoke, Jennifer?
No, this one is in the current show. This is in
Oh,
the member show now.
good. That's even better. So it's such a striking image. It's your sensitivity to color and the interesting and complex composition. All of those things are so extraordinarily well done. But when you realize that it's hand cut and hand dyed paper, that's not something that most of us are familiar with, although there are cultures and times when that has been a fairly important artistic medium. So first, could you just quickly tell us why you moved from painting to being a cut paper artist?
Yeah, I had studied painting. I went to the Baltimore School for the Arts in Baltimore City for high school. And BSA is a an arts magnet school. So when I was there, I got a really intensive education in traditional drawing and painting techniques. And I studied there with the intention of going to art school and pursuing painting and illustration full time. And when I was in college in Philadelphia, I ended up getting really, really sick and having to leave school. And when I had to leave school, I kind of hit a wall with painting. It was a period of my life where um, the medium I thought I was going to be exploring and the way I thought I was going to be exploring it just wasn't happening. And I got really creatively stuck and didn't know where I wanted to take the painting. And so I thought, okay, I have some downtime right now. I can kind of explore different things and see if something clicks and kind of jumpstarts my creativity and my wanting to make things again. And I had known about paper cutting, and I had an X-Acto knife and a self-healing mat, and I had just bought these really, really nice drawing papers with the intent of using them in my paintings. And they were so beautiful on their own. I didn't want to layer anything on
Hmm.
top for
Hmm.
fear that I was going to ruin them.
Hmm.
So I set this challenge for myself of what can I make with just these papers. And the first paper cut I ever did, I just was setting myself this challenge of it doesn't have to be amazing, just try it out, do something small, and just finish it. If you can get over the hurdle of just finishing one, then that would be, awesome, and maybe that'll get me to want to start creating again. And I did that, and I just really fell in love with it. And as soon as I finished that first paper cut, I just wanted to keep exploring and keep seeing where I could push it.
Well, that's fascinating because you started with some very solid training as a painter, and then this illness interrupted sort of your development as a painter, and you took up a form of creativity that, in my experience as an art historian, it's not so unusual for somebody to move from what uh, can be called a craft, although you certainly have made this into artistry, into something like painting, which is considered to be, at least in the past, a more noble or more creative medium. But you have very good historical antecedents in this regard. You probably know the early 20th century abstract painter Vasily Kandinsky.
Mhm.
And he really became a painter because he was studying law and became ill. And sort of as you were, looking for a way to be creative while he was physically incapacitated to some extent. And then also, there are other examples of that, like the great painter Matisse, in his older years, becoming physically incapacitated, could still cut and shape paper and made these wonderful mural size creations. But you have chosen a more diminutive scale for your paper cutting. And I think it's hard as I look at my screen, and it's even somewhat difficult when you see the actual object, to recognize that all of these little flower-like forms are individually cut. Each edge is an individual paper cut, right?
Mhm. Yeah, every single piece is cut by hand. So that lace-like panel that's sandwiched between the overlay and the bluebirds in the background, that's one sheet of paper where all the negative space is cut away.
Yeah. How do you maintain your concentration when you're going through a process like creating these images?
It's very meditative for me. I kind of liken it to what knitting might be for
Hmm.
other people, where once you start, it's just like a mechanical, repetitive process, and I get really lost in it, and then 5, 6 hours goes by, and I'm like, oh, all
Oh,
I've done is
wow.
sit here.
Oh, that's truly amazing. I mean, it's great that you have that ability that's sort of hardwired into your person. Uh, what I want to do right now, though, is first a little publicity for you and for the MFA. The Will Talks are intended to bring to the attention of a wider audience artists that are members and participants in our shows and/or participants in our shows. And since this is currently hanging and will be hanging for about the rest of this month, I hope people are going to see it and see this Will Talk and be encouraged to go in and see it for themselves. But now you provided us with a short video to show your working process. So I think it might be easier for people who are encountering your work for the first time, and it'll help me also to understand exactly what that working process is. So, Marissa, if you would share those.
Yeah, so this is the cutting of the cherry blossom petals and kind of showing that lace-like quality. And then this takes through kind of the layering of the pieces together and showing how the composition came together. So I took these three bluebirds and then individually placed them, played around with the composition. And then this is a detail of the paper up close.
So the edges, the margins or edges, that's a different piece of paper.
Yeah, so the border piece, what I call my overlays, that's a completely other sheet of paper.
Hmm.
And when that gets assembled together, that is attached to a support piece. I use archival mat board as my supports in various degrees of thickness. And there's typically two supports in my pieces. There's one really big, thick support that is attached to that really pale blue paper, and that's like
Hmm.
the furthest backing piece. And then that border piece is also attached to a support. So the entire paper cut is between these two supports to help combat any warping that might happen on the piece and the frame. Um,
Hmm.
because when you cut the weight out of paper, it starts to behave like fabric.
Yes.
And when
Yeah.
you're hanging it on the wall, you want to combat gravity as best as you can.
Yeah. So do you do all of that? You do the essentially the mounting and framing as well as creating the image?
So I assemble the piece together and I put in all the supports, but I don't personally do the framing. I work really closely with my framer, who is also my documenter and the guy who does my prints. We've been working really closely together to come up with the best way to frame these so that
Mhm.
they are best supported when they're on the wall and there's no warping.
Two questions that might be that are very simplistic, but I feel like I have to ask them. The image behind you on the screen,
Mhm.
is that actual size? It looks like it's quite large.
It's not. It's a smaller piece in person. This piece is currently at a principal gallery in Alexandria. But my studio is really messy and I didn't want anybody to see
Yeah,
it, so I threw the
that's great.
background up.
I just wanted to be sure it's true size because the things that I have seen by you are much smaller in scale.
Mhm.
And now this is really an obvious. I feel like it's a superficial question, but I just have to know, how often are you cutting a piece and then you realize you cut the wrong direction or cut too much and you have to sort of start over, at least on that one little piece?
Yeah, I think with my background in being a watercolor painter, it kind of instilled a little bit of fearlessness in me because when you're painting in watercolor, it's staining the paper, and a lot of people want to know what happens when you make a mistake. And what you learn in watercolor painting is that there's always a level you can adjust to make the mistake seem intentional.
Hmm.
So in paper cutting, I kind of stole that kind of mentality of just
Hmm. Hmm.
if you're afraid of making a mistake, you're never going to start or make anything. So if I cut the wrong thing or if I make a mistake, it's now just a challenge of how to incorporate it, how to make it seem intentional, or how
Hmm.
to either subtract more paper or add more paper. I very rarely start completely over. There's always some sort of level that I can adjust.
Yeah. Well, let's hold right here on this image because I think that what you were just talking about is very relevant. If I am I reading this right to say that every color is a separate sheet of paper?
Yes.
Okay.
So every single time there's a color change in one of my pieces, that is a completely separate tile of paper, and that gets adhered to the back of the piece. So I work backwards. So everything that I'm working on, you're going to see the reverse of it when it's in the frame and hanging on the wall. So this is attaching feathers to a paper heron. So each individual color change is a separate sheet of paper cut to fit that space.
Okay. And then I see the tip of a blade of an X-Acto knife, and I see another tool. I don't quite know what that is, and I'm curious about that. And the little look like pinpricks. Is that curved tool or the X-Acto knife? And are you puncturing a layer of paper so that you create that little indentation?
So the little cutouts are done with the knife, and instead of puncturing it through, I'm cutting little individual dots. Because when you puncture paper, it doesn't always look the best from the reverse side, and I'm always focused on what the reverse is going to look like. So I'm
Wow.
making cuts with the intention of what's going to be the most beautiful from the side that you're going to see. And then the other tool, the silver tool, is a pair of curved tweezers that just allow me to place the paper exactly where it needs to go.
Wow. Okay, let's look at a couple of the other images. First of all, I have to say that, well, I'll just ask you because this is your mode of creation. Do you have other artists, colleagues that work in a similar way?
I know a lot of other paper cutters. I have the privilege of to know a lot of incredibly talented paper artists, and everybody works completely differently.
Hmm.
So I have a friend, Lucrezia Bailar, who is a paper artist, and she does incredibly intricate cuts that are all done with scissors. And I've seen her do it, and I have no idea how she does it still. Um, and yeah, a lot of just different ways of paper cutting. When I was teaching myself paper, it was really just a process of trial and error for me. When I was learning, I wasn't looking at other paper artists. I wanted to see what I could come up with without having any outside influence. So I started kind of building my process, and then after a few years of doing that, I found the Guild of American Paper Cutters, GAP, and I got to meet a lot of other paper artists and just have my mind open to the vast world of paper art,
Hmm.
see all the intricate things that other artists were doing. Um, and paper is such a versatile medium, just everybody's work is so different and so neat, unique.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even with you telling us that there are other paper cutters that are doing similar things, I'm certainly still left with the very strong impression that you have a very unique way. You can't have a very unique way, a unique way of expressing yourself and a unique process for creation. So I think that's part of what the beauty of your images and the sort of like this giving chase, the cleverness of your subject matter is appealing in its own right. And I'm just going to say for myself, I tend to place the creation of beauty or the creation of emotional connection with the viewer far beyond manual dexterity. But it's clear that you have created that connection between subject and process that most artists don't achieve to such a complete integration. And that is impressive to me in its own right. And your work, well, let's go ahead, skip ahead to the next image. The fact that there's a consistency, it seems, with the kinds of forms or patterns that are appealing to you, but each image, at least what I've seen, is still distinct. It's not like you're working in a series. Each one, am I right, or do you think in a series or a theme?
Yeah, I'm always thinking of what is the best use of pattern for the piece that I'm creating. I do have patterns that I go back to, but I'm not necessarily thinking of creating pieces in a series. But I am more so thinking of it as kind of patterns that exist within my universe. I
Hmm.
think of it
Hmm.
similarly to how fashion houses have like prints that appear on their clothes repetitively, even if they're not all belonging to the same collection. So there are patterns that are unique to my work, um, but they're not necessarily relating to each other, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. And so uh, the question then I have is, are those patterns solely in your head, in your hands, or do you keep them in sort of like a file where you can take it out and look at it and reproduce it?
A lot of the patterns that I cut repetitively, I have memorized. I like to cut a lot of my patterns free-handed instead of drawing them out,
Hmm.
because there's a fluidity that I'm aiming for, especially since I specialize in wildlife art and I'm trying to capture kind of the movement of different animals. I want the patterns to also have a sense of movement to them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you actually have just brought up yourself the wildlife art aspect that I was going to ask about because I'm a very sort of laissez-faire, amateurish bird watcher. I got the Boy Scout bird watching merit badge back in the day, and I still have bird feeders and all of that. But I've noticed that the birds that I've seen in your work, I don't recognize them as an actual species in nature. Am I correct?
I take a lot of creative liberties with my subjects. So they are based on real birds, but I like to um, add kind of my creative flair to them and
Yes.
make them seem more fantastical. So this bird and the birds that are in the member show are based off of a bluebird that lives in our garden and visits us every spring. But I like to make his feathers really vibrant and um, kind of I'm more interested in capturing the spirit of the animal rather than getting like a very kind of photorealistic, correct anatomy um, kind of feel.
Well, I think that's a very much more artistic and creative attitude. Uh, John James Audubon is somebody that almost everyone's heard of, and his famous Birds of America and all of that. And he thought he was trying to do capture the essence of the bird, the individual species, and the individual bird, but he also was trying to make it that without the tool of a camera
Mhm.
as realistic as he could, as naturalistic as he could. So, sure, his work is wonderful and deserves all the praise and recognition that he's always gained. But I think you're doing it in a more creative, a more artistic way, for sure. I think we have one more image. I love blue herons. When they're taking pictures of blue herons, just because I like blue herons. But this is a wonderful rendition, that glaring, fierce eye and the sharp bill and the feathers, the chest feathers, etc. But why do you call it wisdom and empathy?
This piece was made for a gallery show at Poetic Tiger Gallery in Boise, Idaho. And the theme of the show was invisible threads. It was supposed to showcase pieces that illustrated a human connection in some sort of fashion. The idea was like the threads that bind us all. And since I'm a wildlife artist, I started looking towards the symbolism in animals. And I love herons. Herons are probably my favorite
Yeah,
bird to make, especially making them out of paper. And I was looking into the symbolism of herons, and I found that in a lot of cultures, they're a symbol of wisdom and
yes,
empathy. And I
yeah,
think that those are two threads that connect us all together, or should.
yeah. Well, I wish we could talk longer, but we are trying to keep these will talks about the current exhibitions brief so that people can quickly absorb them, and hopefully it will encourage them to come and see your work. And I thought your work was beautiful from the first time that I saw it, but I appreciate the very thoughtful things you've had to say today. Because it makes me, and I hope it makes others who see and hear this, realize that there's a lot of depth and a lot of layers, literally and figuratively, to what you're doing. So I really do appreciate the chance to talk to you, and I hope I'll see you perhaps at one of the receptions for the summer show. And good luck in what has obviously already been a very successful career.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Will.
Okay. And Marissa, thank you for your support. Did you have any questions that came to mind that you want to ask?
Um, Not questions, but I was looking into your work more and reading about you and your bio. And I read that you have sold over 200 pieces of original work. So big congrats to you. That's quite
Yeah.
a milestone.
Thank you.
You're such an inspiration. I agree with Will. I hope that many, many people come in to see this show and especially get to appreciate the layers that go into your work in person
Great.
as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that wraps up the formal part of the talk. And I think, Jennifer, you know that we will turn these around, edit them, and get them out as quickly as possible and send you the digital copy so you can use it as you wish to promote yourself and encourage people to come and see the shows, the ours and any others that you wanted to use this for. And I am going to send you both a picture of a blue heron as soon as I get off this screen.
Thank you so much, Will. It's so kind. Thank you.